So, less than 30 seconds to go. In fact, you can see there it's ticking over as we come back to the Super Sprint Sunday. Having a few technical problems, which is never the most helpful going into a stream. But we will see if we can get this going and get this on as Jared Vermeulen does lead from the pole position. And we'll just see if this has started to work as we are now finally live. And we'll just take you through for the start of race number one. So I remind you, no pit stops here in terms of its 20-minute sprint. No scheduled stops for this or the 40-minute race as Jared Vermeulen crosses the line in just about, as you can see, quite a few drivers have had to have a pit lane start. So cross the line in about 20 seconds or so. We'll leave the car to the right-hand side, starting right alongside that pit wall as Daniel Crossman looking to see if he can relieve him a pole into Rich's corner. Turn number one. We're waiting, and we are go. And Jared Vermeulen does get a good start, but can Daniel Crossman get a better one? No, he can't. He's already had to see position to Vermeulen. Up the inside goes Marcelin Bristulli. Bristulli in third position, the Canadian in the Porsche, in a sea of Ferraris, is able to challenge Crossman, but he's not going to challenge him because instead he's been challenged by Wouter Heijmans. Heijmans having to tuck in ahead of Steve Desert and Morgan Grace. Grace, they're tucking as well. They all look pretty well behaved. There's a couple of yellow flags going into the Montreal hairpin. You can see that's car 181, I think, has gone off and into the weeds there. There's a couple of drivers then start to leave the pit lanes. The car 187, I think it was, who is now off and out of the race. Jack Barnett already has a drive-through penalty for a starting infringement, so that's disastrous there as Jeffrey DeFast recovers. Now, the Ford Mustang there is Jack Barnett. He is pulling away rather sheepishly from the scene of the crime so far, but it is still Jared Vermeulen leading ahead of Daniel Crossman as they come out of Oggies and through the Williams Bend that you can see there now, and he's already built up a lead of about 3/4 of a second. Marcelin Bristulli is still in third position. That Porsche should be pretty good off of the traction lines and should be able to get away, and he has got away from Wouter Heijmans. Heijmans, though, is being attacked by Desert. Desert goes down the inside going into Brundle, has to back out, but Desert now will try and launch his attack from Nelson. What was formerly known as the S's is started to be a bit of a difficulty zone for Wouter Heijmans. He's escaped this time by, but Desert will have designs on that fourth position ahead of Morgan Grace. Morgan Grace is another man to be challenging ahead rather than fighting behind. Paul Vidler in seventh as Desert now gets a run out of Murray's. He's going to have to go the long way around though in the pit lane, or the start straight here means that there's a slight curve and there's going to be a bit more favouritism to the car on the inside, but Morgan Grace there bumps into Heijmans. Desert's actually going to lose out. He is going to lose out. He loses out to Morgan Grace. Grace up a position. Heijmans nearly down a position, but Desert, having challenged, is going to be down 2 positions because where he's looking to get fourth, he's now seventh as Paul Vidler comes up the inside and gets past him. So disaster for the Dutchman there. He was hoping, praying he could get fourth position, but instead he's fallen all the way back because the run he got out of Murray's left him on the outside, and with the slight curve in the start straight, that was all that was needed to rob him of the line and rob him of fifth position. So we're going to see if there's a further battle. Renard Serfontaine all over the back of Andrew Eden. This is not the class victory because Serfontaine already leaded the silver car. The coal pits there we saw, well we didn't, I saw having a little spin at the end of the qualifying session. He's back and he's up into second in silver. So we've already got a couple of positions. Serafino Gabino and Chris Gebman a bit higher up as well. So Chris Gebman's had a cracking start, hasn't he? He's, fifth position in silver, so we'll see exactly how that played out. But Renard Serfontaine is all over the back, or he was all over the back of Andrew Eden, and Eden is, I remind you, a pro ahead of the silver Serfontaine. If Serfontaine stays where he is, he takes the lead of the silver class, so he doesn't need to go wiggling his wheels at other classes, and he'll take a sensible pill, I am sure. Out front, Vermeulen leads as he has done since the start. He's 1.5 seconds clear of Daniel Crossman, who's 2 seconds, 2.5 clear of Marcelin Bristulli. Wouter Heijmans, meanwhile, is in fourth, 2 seconds back, and he's still fending off the attentions of other Ferraris because Morgan Grace is 6/10 of a second back. He's dropped a little bit, hasn't he, compared to Paul Vidler. Vidler's had a great exit, hasn't he? He's closer to half a second as Grace loses out actually by a further few seconds, tenths of a second, isn't he? He's now 9 tenths off the pace. and we'll just see this further battle. There's a few certainly now crossing the line as they start to space themselves out. Jamie Thacker's got an excellent lead, isn't he, in the AM class? He's had so many chances to win where it's not quite gone his way in the AM class, but 12th he is, and the black and grey Ford Mustang is in, well, he's in dreamland as far as the AM class is concerned, because he's got 7 places over the next AM driver, which is a reserve, so will not be scoring points. It's Greg Wood that he's got to watch out for. Greg Wood is in 20th and 3rd in the AM class, so way back, as we try and see. I think Michel van der Waal was one of those who was leading certainly in Silver Class. He just got the inside there of Gooday. Does he know, not quite going into Agostini. He's not able to pull the move off there, with Michael Coppins a little bit further back as well, having been shuffled back earlier on. But yeah, Van der Waal was 10th, wasn't he, on the grid? So disastrous start for the Dutchman there. He's 24, dropped 14 places. We'll certainly hear about how that's come about. Now, Gordon Brown has got himself onto the back of the Silver Class pack. He was all the way down in 39th, wasn't he? Darren Townsend's into the pits, and Jack Barnett, I think, served his drive through already for that pit lane, for that start line infringement, sorry. But Gordon Brown, 29th, has got onto the back of the Silver Class. That's partly because Alexander Kalugin has started from the pits. I think he was a little bit earlier on, but he was certainly dropped to 32nd by fair means or foul. Brown has got past Johnson in the midst of all that. Johnson, a new to the championship reserve in the Silver Class in 29th, and doing a good job he is too, despite what was an apparently lowly position. That's a very difficult championship to debut in, a very difficult track too, so all credit to him. As we can see now, up at the front, there's a bit of a two-tier, well, not two-tier class really, it's a 2 Ferrari class, these two in a class of their own, 1.5 seconds apart. Chile dropping back to 4 seconds now, so the Canadian really is having a hard time staying with the two in front, but he's doing well as regards to behind, because Walter Hyman's is 1.7 seconds still off the back of that, with Morgan Gray 6 cents back, as off goes Steve Desire. Steve Desire is not where he should be. He is 11th, so I suspect he's ran slightly wide going through the first couple of corners. It's very easy to do so at Rich's turn number 1, and Paul Vidler has dropped a couple of seconds, as well as Andrew Eden, who still has Renard Serfontaine all over the back of him. So Renard Serfontaine in 8th position, but leads the Silver Class with Lee Colpitt's behind. I suspect that actually Serfontaine would be better off using Eden as a bit of a pick, because the Lexus is so quick in a straight line. What you really don't want to be doing is giving yourself a chance to be overtaken by a Silver Car. So Lee Colpitt's in 9th, real threat for the win. Richard Gearman is not far away at all, is he? He's in 10th overall, 3rd in class. But Gearman, who won last time out, and actually quite low in the championship considering the pace that he's had. He's 5th or 6th, isn't he, in the championship, but now has the attention of Steve Desire behind. Whilst that's a position overall, that won't be a position in class, so he may choose to fight that one slightly differently. You can see already Crossman's dropped a couple of tenths, but Bristoli's dropped a second off of the back of second place, and Walter Hyman's not able to capitalise on that, because he's got Morgan Grace just behind him. Grace in the Ferrari, his painted it in the Italian Tricolore, and the Ferrari, well, I say the Ferrari, there's 5 in the top 6, as you've become accustomed to seeing over the course of this season. We are, I remind you, round number 4 of 7, so halfway throughout the course of this event, and certainly into the second half by the end of the 40-minute race. So Grace there turns his way round Agostini, which is one of the additions they made. This track used to be 2 right angles connected by 2 long straights and a loop, and what it now is you've still got the first corner similar to what it was, but where there was a 90-degree right-hander in turn number 2, we elongated that straight, elongated the braking zone, turned it into a tight hairpin, giving us the infield section that you see now, which is good for fan viewership. I can attest to that, but isn't quite the same track that it once was. So Newton leads now by 3 seconds. Crossman had a bit of an off, hasn't he, at some stage, because that was 1.9, it's now 3.1, and Marcolin Bristoli still 5 seconds back, but not really being bothered by Hymans, is he? As soon as we get to Morgan Grace, he drops back by a few tenths, so Grace is fairly comfortable in 5th ahead of Paul Vidler. So we're going to go to a battle a little bit further back. Serfontaine has dropped off the back of Andrew Eden, but Lee Colpitt's going through Coram is not just dropped off the back of Serpentine. So the battle for the silver lead is pretty intense, with Richard Gearman not going away either. Gearman was shown a remarkable improvement, despite being probably the favoured car, you have to say, that Ferrari. Gearman has shown remarkable improvement over the last couple of seasons to find himself to the sharp end of the silver class, and the Dutchman is doing a good job. But Serpentine now, he might choose to play this slightly differently, because at the moment he's in with a big chance of taking the lead of the silver class. Reminder, the grid that was set with Gordon Brown, the championship leader, way back, and Renard Serpentine towards the sharp end. If Lee Colpitts does go for a move, and I think Colpitts might know this, but if Lee Colpitts is close enough to go for a move, Serpentine might pull out of it, knowing that he's in a really golden position, isn't he, to take the silver championship lead. I know there's a drop score to think about, but the BMW behind us getting a little bit leery, isn't he? So Lee Colpitts trying to catch up to the back of Serpentine, might have overdone it there. Richard Gearman behind, though, 4/10 as they go through Hamilton's into Oggies, and Gearman, though, goes slightly. Does he go into the back? I don't think there is contact, but you don't want to be any closer. And Gearman now trying to make the move through Oggies. Through Williams they go, and the Ferrari does make a bit of contact there. You can see the back end of the BMW squirming, squealing, saying no more, no more. But Gearman does not make the move, so not enough to unsettle the BMW out of the way. Jamie Thacker, meanwhile, we have to go back to this, is doing an excellent job, isn't he, in the AM class. In the AM lead, we can see that Greg Wood somewhere has dropped off, because he was in third, he was 20th, he's now 34th, so the championship leader in the Aston Martin of the AM class, Greg Wood, not having it all his own way. He's behind Johnson and Marco, well, he's ahead of Marco Lino, but Greg Wood, notwithstanding the drop score, this could be really difficult round for the Englishman. A former commentator, I might remind you, but certainly all focused on the racing this season. Joachim Vereth, meanwhile, in that capricious Audi, is second now, so he's 18th, but he's 6 cars, all silver, behind the leader, Jamie Thacker, in the AM class. So I remind you, the AM class is painted with the red numbers, or the red block behind the numbers. It's grey for the silver class, and it's pro for the silver white that you see there. So Desire, Thacker and Gabino all in different classes. Down the inside goes car number 5. That is Josh Clayton coming all the way back through from the back, and down the inside he goes, the pro driver, racing for Pride and Pride only. Up the inside of Vereth. Vereth does let him through relatively easy. Don't think there's any sense in fighting that, but Clayton does move him out slightly. And now the Audi, is he going to have a look down the inside? He is, but only to try and put the Ford driver off. It's not going to be any gain of position. So Josh Clayton there up into 19th and doing a good job to get onto the back. He's got past, well, he's ahead of Vaclav Poshmajil, who started all the way back down the grid in the same circumstances as Josh Clayton, where they failed to set a lap time. It's only a one-shot qualifying session. But Clayton now having a look at Jordan Marshall. And can he get the move done into Oggies? No, he can't. Marshall covers that inside off, and Vereth is looking to have another go. Vereth would do well to stay out of this, because you've got Michel van der Waal behind who'll have a look down the inside, and you've got the 2 AM drivers, Waste and Coppens, 21st and 22nd. So Josh Clayton in the groove. Is he going to be, as he's stuck behind that flashing light that you always seem to have with Jordan Marshall, but that flashing light, I can't think it's very helpful for the drivers at all. But Marshall sticks with it, and certainly warns all other drivers, not just Josh Clayton, of his presence. So they go through the bomb hole now. Is he going to be able to set it up through Coram? I doubt very much he is, but he might just have the Mercedes out of line, or offline, sorry, and out of rhythm into Murray. So through Murray's they go, and the Mustang looks like it's got a better exit, doesn't it? But the Mercedes is no slouch in a straight line. Can the Mustang, as there is a McLaren, don't know which one it is, someone has spun, that's car 71, that's Michel van der Waal. So all the way back down the order he goes, as up the inside into Riches goes Josh Clayton. He doesn't quite get the move done. Marshall not willing to part with 17th. Frenchman in the silver class has already gone up one position, courtesy of van der Waal's spinning around at Murray's. But Clayton there up into 18th, but not able to get any further at all. So we'll see now. The lead for silver is spread out a bit. So it looks like Serpentine has got away there. But someone who hasn't got away is Lee Colpitts. He is 1.5 seconds off of Serpentine. but he's much less than 1.5 seconds ahead of both Richard Gearman and Steve Desert. Desert went off earlier on, didn't he? He was up in the pro group, the lead group, but has dropped all the way back. He's dropped into 11th. He goes down the inside into Brundle, up the inside of Richard Gearman. Gearman still stays there going into Nelson, but they sort it out. Good move there from Steve Desert for position on the road, if not position in class. And Steve Desert is off on to the back of Lee Colpitts. I think Gearman might actually have thought that he might be able to use Desert's carnage, and I use that in terms of a pro amongst silvers, to his advantage, as Colpitts now 1.6 off the back of Serfontaine, so might think about defence and keeping that car behind him, with Jamie Thacker in the AM class a non-factor. It really is between these two for second in the silver category. So when I say these two, it's Lee Colpitts in 9th and Richard Gearman in 11th, with Desert in the middle, looking to see if he can make hay whilst the sun doesn't shine. We're now 5 minutes away from the end of this race, so nearly 2 minute lap. I'm at 46 it was for pole position. There's Daniel Crossman in second. He's got a 6-second lead over Michael and Brushulli. I think those two phoning it in, with Brushulli nearly doing likewise really with Mouser Hyman's. Hyman's certainly having more battles behind than he is ahead. Paul Vidler in 6th, 3.5 seconds thereabouts clear of Andrew Mead, the other non-Ferrari, in the top 7, with Desert now 10th, all over the back of Colpitts in that. It's the twisty section, the infield section, where the Ferrari, especially in the hands of a pro, he starts to get momentum over the BMW ahead. The BMW Lee Colpitts driven by an experienced man, I think it's fair to say, so certainly someone who's been around the block in sim racing, but is he going to be able to hold off the advances of Steve Desert? Does he have the desire to hold off the advances of Steve Desert? Now, Desert going down the back straight into Brundle. He's going to have a look. Is he down the inside? No, not quite. The Ferrari not able to get anywhere close to the back of Lee Colpitts. As he does, though, seem to make a little bit of contact down the inside again. No, not quite into the bomb hole. You're never going to really make an overtake there, but he might be able to set something up through Coram. So, over the back of the Ferrari, does look rather angry, a little bit fearful as far as Colpitts, who applies the brakes there to keep the back end settled. Down the inside into Murray's we go, but nothing doing there. Colpitts able to take the apex and take the line, but Desert now gets a good exit out of Murray's. Is he able to make the move? Is he able to get the slipstream of the BMW? I think the BMW is going to have it, isn't he, going into Riches? So Colpitts there able to survive in 9th position for another lap. Though I think he might, just Desert does get a little bit out of shape going through turn of 1. I think he might be wise to let him go at some point to not jeopardise, as there is contact as soon as I say Steve Desert runs into the back of Lee Colpitts, and the Brit spins his way out of second and drops to, I think, 4th, so it's not disastrous but mildly annoying. Desert does pull over. There's a little bit of flashing going on from Lee Colpitts. I suspect that's not a thank you for waiting up, that's a what were you doing, and quite rightly so. Colpitts now drops to 11th. Third, 4th, no, he's 12th, 4th in the silver category, so a podium position goes, and it's Serafino Gabino, the lucky dog, who gets up into 3rd in class. Jamie Thacker, meanwhile, the AM class up into the top 10, puts another couple of cars between himself and Joachim Bereth, with Gordon Brown actually all over the back of Joachim Bereth. So I think that might be the next battle. Brown of the Sky-branded Ferrari, who had said that he wasn't expecting anything from this, out of Agostini, going through Hamilton. Is he? No, he's going to quite wisely back out down the inside and maybe set it up for Ockies, although he does go lawn mowing there, going into Ockies, the double apex right-hander, and the Audi ahead looking a little bit capricious, isn't he? That rear end really not settling, but can Vereth hold off Brown, or can Brown get past Vereth and maybe up ahead? Because albeit there's going to be 4 seconds between himself and Clayton, you never know, as Brown does go down the inside. 5 seconds between himself and Clayton, who's got onto the back of Terry Tierney. Chris Gedman, another man in the hunt for the championship lead, although he's not going to get that here unless something quite badly or goes wrong in Renard Serfontaine's world. Serfontaine, you can see in 8th, is leading the silver class, with Gedman now out of the final quarter. He's got Terry Tierney behind him. Tierney's had a pretty good start to the championship. He was 2nd, wasn't he, in the Kyle Army rounds, both races, the Irishman on debut, and he's certainly been, as he gets out of the way, you can see in the background of Josh Clayton going up the inside. Gordon Brown does get past Joachim Vereth. I think Vereth might have exited stage left or exited stage right, because Sam Reeves is also ahead, and Vereth drops to 20s. We didn't see that, but the Audi was looking a little bit tail happy, wasn't he? As we go, I think, possibly onto the last lap. No, that is going to be the last lap next time around, because that is Jared Vermeulen, who could probably boil the kettle by the time he crosses the line next time around. Such is the gap he's got over Crossman, who's got a further 8 seconds over Bruce Tully. So the field spread out really well, and certainly this is an advert then for the previous format, which was the reverse grid, because you've got Crossman 8 seconds back in second, Bruce Tully 8 seconds back in third, and certainly you'll be hoping for a similarly peaceful round, even if the commentator is not, with no offence meant to any of the top three. Jared Vermeulen starting his last lap. We'll circle back to him in about a minute's time as we go now possibly to Lee Colpitts, who was caught at the back of Serafino Gabino, so a podium could still be on for the Englishman, who was rather unceremoniously dumped out of it by Seb Desert. Desert in 13th, who to his credit did wait up, so I suspect realised that he was in the wrong, but it's going to be doubly disappointing for Colpitts if he can't quite get past Gabino to drop from second to fourth. But you have to give credit to Desert for waiting and admitting mistakes there. That's what we do like to see in FRL, if there are to be any collisions. So Luke Richards, we haven't really mentioned, he's fifth in silver, going about his job rather well. Chris Gebman, meanwhile, has Josh Clayton behind. Does he? No, he doesn't, because Clayton's gone off at some point and is now battling once again with Terry Tierney. So Clayton was just a tenth or so behind Gebman. He's now well clear of that, as Tierney now encouraged to have a go at Gebman, and I say mostly encouraged to have a go by the car behind him, which is Josh Clayton. Gordon Brown now 4.5 seconds back, not a factor in this. So I think Clayton might just be forced to settle for 17th, which has been a good run, even if it's not really come at the advancement of any silver or any pro class victories. We're going to go now to the leader for the final lap. As it comes round Coram, Jared Vermeulen is going to get out of Murray's, and well, he could probably get out, walk and push it, couldn't he? Because 8.5 seconds he is. Jared Vermeulen wins to extend his championship lead. Another dominant display in the absence of any other competition. Jared Vermeulen wins, and wins well. Daniel Crossman is going to finish second in the Ferrari Calibrati 4 to wheel his way across the line. Marcelin Bruch-Tully is a distant third, but a good third nonetheless. He should be very pleased with that. The combative Canadian ahead of Wouter Heijmans and Morgan Grace, not able to get up into fourth in the end. Paul Fiddler has a clean run to sixth position ahead of Andrew Eden, the other car in the pro class, not in the leading class here, where there's not a Ferrari. Bernard Serfontein comes over to take a really impressive silver win and 8th overall for the South African. He will be pleased with that. Richard Gearman takes a slightly fortuitous second position in the class and 9th overall. Jamie Thacker with a brilliant win in the AM class. He's dominated the AM class in race number 1. He's ahead of the third place silver finisher Serafino Gabino, with Lee Colpitts in 12th ahead of Seb Desert and Luke Richings. Chris Gebman is going to come across the line just ahead of Terry Tierney. Josh Clayton's gone off and into the weeds, and what was 17th, Gordon Brown, has dropped off as well. So Gordon Brown has lost out plenty of positions, and actually it's going to be Joachim Vereth in 17th and second in the AM class. Sam Greaves on the in the reserve BMW ride in the silver class, he comes in 18th. Good effort from him, as well as Jackie Day in the Bentley. Michael Coppins rounds out the AM podium in 20th, and Gordon Brown 21st in the end. So the silver driver, who had a really good chance there of not quite making the podium, but certainly being towards the sharp end, has unfortunately lost out. So Josh Clayton is 22nd over Jordan Marshall in 23rd. Jeffrey Navas in 24th, so 4th in the AM class. In 24th, sorry, in the AM class, with Alexander Galugin in 25th, so the Russian recovering from earlier problems there, with Waste in 26th ahead of Paul Trotman in 27th, Michael van der Waal in 28th. So the Dutchman, having spun his way round a little while earlier on, lost out quite badly, didn't he, from 10th on the grid. Miguel Silva is in 29th ahead of Akla Pospisil, was going around to take the adulation of the crowd. Matt Johnson in the Porsche is in 31st. The silver reserve driver ahead of Darren Davies and James O'Leary. Matty Lemon is 34th, ahead of Vian Kruger and Jack Barnett, who had that drive-through penalty right at the start in 36th. Greg Wood, who was in 3rd, and the championship leader of the AM class, is in 37th, ahead of Dreadlock Steve in 38th. Marco Lino, Dale Kelleher also having their race curtailed by issues, with Darren Townsend 5 laps down and Ryan Betterson 10 laps down in the Lexus. So we'll return to the garage, and what should follow is if we can see it, certainly I think we can only see the timetables there, but what should follow is a 10-minute free practice session. So that's to get the drivers used to the daylight. I was about to say sunshine, but it's not been sunshine in the east of England whatsoever, but it should be able to then get the cars used to the certainly brighter conditions, although that's not going to happen until Vaclav Pospisil brings his Porsche into the pit. So we'll wait there just for a moment, and we will be back very shortly. And as I was saying about there being a free practice, obviously there was none, but we are back racing for the second round, the 40-minute race. No pit stops here either for the Sunday Sprint Series, brought to you by Simnet. We'll take you through the grid quite quickly because we didn't get a chance to earlier. As Jaffrey Mullen and Daniel Crossman start first and second, with Mark Brushulli and Wouter Heimans third and fourth in Pro Class. Siep de Zeer and Morgan West share row 3, with Paul Vidler and Andrew Eden 7th and 8th. Richard Gibbon is in 9th to lead the Silver Class ahead of Michel van der Waal and Renat Servantijn, with Lee Colpitts, who was on for pole position until he had his little half spin out of Murray's, in 4th in the Silver Class. He's 12th overall. Jamie Thacker and Jack Gooday are 13th and 14th ahead of Michael Coppins and Greg Wood in 15th and 16th. Luke Richings is 17th alongside Serafino Gabino, with James O'Leary and Jordan Marshall in 20th. Waste, the AM reserve, is in 21st ahead of Terry Tierney in 22nd, with Marco Lino and Vian Kruger on row number 12. Miguel Silva is in 25th ahead of Chris Getman in 26th, with Paul Trotman on beginning row number 14 and ending it because Matt Lemon has left the server and is coming back. Darren Davies is in 29th ahead of Johnson, the Silver Reserve, with Jeffrey Nefast in 31st. Alexander Kalugin in 32nd. Jack Barnett is 33rd ahead of Joachim Bereth, with Dreadlock Steve and Sam Greaves sharing row number 18. Gordon Brown is 37th and will hoping to come through the grid as he did previously. He's alongside Dale Kelleher, the man whose start to the season was troubled by injury but has started to show a bit of form recently. Josh Clayton is 39th ahead of Vaclav Pospisil, with Darren Townsend and Ryan Betterson finishing off the grid orders. We've got 20 seconds to go. Just a reminder, really, for me to talk to you about our sponsors, our wonderful sponsors. Once again, Simnet are bringing the Super Sprint Sunday Championship to life in the Formula Racing League. They're the place to go for any kind of sim racing accessories, be it boots, be it your sim rig, be it anything you want it to be, gloves even, I've seen certain drivers have. It's certainly where I will shop after this, and I encourage you to look at that too. Another reminder as well that we've got a Patreon server, which for £4 a month, or roughly half a Big Mac, you can subscribe to our Patreon server. That pays for the servers, keeps the wheels turning, as well as allowing things like, getting you access to your favourite number, your cars a little bit earlier, guaranteed entry to a championship. But enough of that, because Jared Vermeulen is now beginning the second race alongside Daniel Crossman. Crossman didn't get off to the best of starts a little bit earlier on. Will he be able to make good on his potential? See if he can get across Vermeulen. Now they're going to be waiting. They're waiting. Look at how many cars have got to come through the final corner. They're waiting a little bit more, and we are... We go, and Jared Vermeulen gets a good start again on the inside. Daniel Crossman makes a better fist of it this time around, but I think it's going to be Vermeulen leading into turn number one. It is Marklin Bristulli. Looks like he's going to have a go at Daniel Crossman, as we've got Jack Gooday starting from the pit lane. Disaster for the Bentley driver there, but Wouter Hyman's now looking towards the inside. Is he? No, not quite. Bristulli's able to fend off the Dutchman's advances there. Now, we were fairly clean up until the back of the pack in turn number two. Let's see how this one goes through. It looks like they're all well behaved as a couple of the cars now come streaming out of the pit lane. Jared Vermeulen, meanwhile, leads into turn at number 4 in Agostini. Daniel Crossman is in second position. He's half a second back from, and third is Marklin Bristulli. He's 9/10 of a second back, but he's got Wouter Hyman's a little bit close for comfort. Wouter Hyman's Steve Desert, who had a bit of a nightmare run. It's dropped to 11th earlier on after getting shuffled back to 7th. As up the inside goes Daniel Crossman. Jared Vermeulen making a rare mistake. He is human, but he's second as well, because Daniel Crossman takes the lead, and the English teenager now has the behemoth in Formula Racing League that is Jared Vermeulen all over him rather than all behind him. Vermeulen got away well, but now he's got to work away past the Ferrari, and he's got 40 minutes to do so thereabouts. But Vermeulen, all the way back, he's back in second, which is uncharted territory for the South African, certainly as far as tonight is concerned. Daniel Crossman leading through Coram, and he's got to now fight for this victory, because it's going to be a difficult run from here. Crossman now coming out of Murray's has got Vermeulen all over him now. Vermeulen wants that lead back, and he wants it back now. I think Crossman's going to have to go to the inside. This will be rinse and repeat for the next 40 minutes if he wants to keep the win. He goes to the inside. Vermeulen pulls out around the outside, going into Riches, not going to work there, as Crossman clips the curb perfectly, pulls himself over to the inside to get ready for the attack around the outside at Wilson. Vermeulen now trying it round the outside, trying to see if he can get a run out of turn number 2, but Crossman keeps a really tight line going into turn number 3. A bit of an awkward corner this. It's more of a prep zone for Agostini, so out of turn number 3 they go. Just that little drop there makes it a bit more difficult for the drivers, but Vermeulen now not able to make the move at the hairpin at Agostini. So Crossman leads for the moment, but with a further yellow flag behind, that's car number 13, who I think has just rejoined into the path of car number 31, or certainly the other way round it might well have been, but there's trials and tribulations there. We'll see who it is. Miguel Silva's involved, so is Terry Tierney, I think, and so is Dale Kelleher. No, Kelleher's not. It's Waste, so a leading position in the AM class has gone to waste for the reserve AM driver, as also towards the back is Andrew Eden, Jack Barnett, Vian Kruger, Richard Gearman, who was towards the pointy end, wasn't he, earlier on, got second in the silver class. Richard Gearman, though, all the way back in 34th, the Dutchman there with some damage, I think, as the long trail of cars, though, as I think there's the Aston Martin as well there. I don't know who that is, but the Aston Martin as well hitting a few problems. That's Matt Lemon in the reserve AM slot, and certainly a bit of a sour taste for Matt Lemon this time around. So Vermeulen now chasing Crossman. Crossman holding him off. There's a couple of yellow flags about. That's car 31 that is in the pits. We'll see who that is. That is Mikael Silva. So the AM driver has pulled into the pits and has bid farewell to the race car. 33 is off and into the weeds, isn't he? Steve Desert has come into the pits. Why has Steve Desert come into the pits? He's only got 4 minutes gone. What's this? Steve Desert, a nightmare day for Steve Desert, because what was a promising grid slot of 5th position is a pit lane return after just 2 laps in race number 2 and dropping to 11th, having probably, well, 13th it was, well outside the sharp end of the Pro Clusters. Up the inside goes Jared Vermeulen, up the inside into Agostini he goes. No, not quite, as Crossman was able to defend and just get the drop on him, but he does spin up coming out of Agostini. Now through Hamilton, the short, sharp left-hander. He's a little bit out of position. Is Vermeulen going to make the move into Oggies? No, is the answer. So Crossman is able to hold the car to the inside. He's now going to need to maximise that run through Williams onto the back straight. I think it's the Bentley straight. And where is he going to place his car? Because you don't want to be too tight going into the S's, or Brundle as it's now known. It's coming to the bridge. You'd normally brake at the bridge and just try and swing the car in, but Vermeulen not going to be close enough to make the move on Crossman. Crossman now going through the S's, or Nels, Brundle and Nelson, as it's now known as, and into the bomb hole with a few corner names that hasn't changed there, and he's got a bit of a gap. I feel like that's a dangerous thing to say, but he has got a bit of a gap on his rivals. Jack Barnett's another man to have come into the pits, so I think we'll hear some more reprisals and some recriminations from those two earlier. They were involved in the incident a little bit earlier on. So Jared Vermeulen is on the back of Crossman. He's a 10th off. He's just set the fastest lap. He's going to go to the outside. Is he going to be able to make it stick? No, but I fear he might just try and have a run up the inside. Crossman immediately covers off the inside going into the Montreal hairpin. This is great racing between the two of them. Vermeulen now goes around the outside. Can he get that cutback? No. And Crossman's going to have to get over to the inside. Is he? No, he gets just enough of a run. That Ferrari really does pull off well coming out of the heavy traction zone that is turn number 2. And Vermeulen has to sit and wait and find another way around. He goes to the inside again for Agostini, but is not able to get the job done. These two, all the while, getting away from Marklin Brushley and Morgan Grace. With Paul Vidler a little bit further back in 5th, so might be an answer there as to what's gone on between Steve Desert and a few others, because Poshbashil and Hyman's, Walter Hyman's taken himself an early lawnmower lesson, hasn't he? Because he's dropped to 24th as we race in the fields of Norfolk and the fields of East Anglia. Certainly a lot of ploughing going on. Now, Jared Vermeulen is 0.2 per second back from Crossman, but made a bit of a mess, didn't he, of the Williams corner, so it proves once again that he is human. And Crossman now has 5 whole tenths per second on, so I'm going to take the risk and look at another battle, which I think is brewing. It's Jordan Marshall and it's Luke Richings. So Lee Colpitts taking what he feels, or he will feel, is rightfully his, and the lead of the Silver Class, because Renard Serfontaine has dropped back to 14th. So Colpitts leads in a sea of ants. So he's got Greg Wood and Jamie Thacker. Thacker, who won so convincingly last time out. As further back goes James O'Leary, and I think that's Terry, no, not Terry Tierney, but O'Leary was a little bit further back. So was Joachim Verrett as he gets shuffled out wide by the recovering Walter Hymans, and not been the best of laps for Verrett, but we're going to go to the lead batter, because into turn number 2 they go. Vermeulen with the unfamiliar sight of a Ferrari or a car in front of him, as usually it's fresh air, trees and whatever else is in the scenery. As Grace will have a look at this as well, because he is only 7 tenths back from Bruce Tully. The difference is, though, he's fighting against a Porsche. So off goes Josh Clayton somewhere. He's certainly found some difficulty. He's dropped out of the top 20, so we'll hear from the Englishman where he's gone there with 24th. I think as the battling mid-pack find its way to Josh Clayton now. Who's out and who's still lapping? Car 666 is still going. That's Dreadlock Steve. He's a little bit further back, though, so I suspect that there's been some difficulties there. Gibbon and Desert are in the pits, so I would love to find out what happened to Steve Desert. We'll try and see as the leading battle actually makes a bit of a lull, or takes a bit of a lull. I say that there's about half a second between them, which is a lull. Let's see if there's any comment as to what happened to Steve Desert, because sometimes you might get the odd recrimination in the... Well, there's already something going on. That's Luke Richings with a self-report, but very honourable from Luke Richings there. But we'll see exactly what's gone on there. He's 12th, so certainly related to lap number 1. So it doesn't tell me an awful lot as to where Steve Desire now is. Gabino and Colpitts engaging in a bit of dialogue, and Richard Gearman typing away, so I'm sure we'll find out what's going on as Darren Townsend disconnected a little bit earlier on. So the Welshman there hampered from his first race, but doing rather well in the second. He's 4th currently in the AM class. We've got Jamie Thacker and Greg Wood fighting away with Lee Colpitts and Michael Coppins just behind. Coppins started quite far back, didn't he? But he was 3rd earlier on in the AM class and making a good job of this, isn't he, so far, the Dutchman? And he'll be rightly pleased with how his evening has gone. Now to 3rd place, or the battle for 3rd place. That's 4th place Morgan Grace in the Ferrari, car number 14, enters the Italian Tricolore to honour the Ferrari heritage. Now let's see, because Bruce Tully goes to the inside, turns in a lot earlier in the Porsche, but he's got brilliant traction, obviously rear-wheel drive as all of these cars are, but the engine over the back of the Porsche's traction zone, which gives it such burp, such verve out of the traction zones, and you can see there pulling away before he does get caught up on a longer straight. So on slightly wide going into Williams, but not able to, doesn't lose anything, does he? So for Mullen, we've got to the back of Crossman, quarter of the way through, and I think this is probably going to be what it's like for the remaining 3/4 of the race. Mullen trying every which way he can to pass Daniel Crossman. Crossman is in the lead, obviously, at this moment in time, but 0.3 of a second, and certainly with a lot of fighting to do, a lot of fighting off to do. And Vermeulen now trying to see if he can scare the young Englishman out of his way. So 0.3 of a second it is. Now Crossman's feeling almost brave, isn't he, to try and get off as Jeffrey DeFast drops off somewhere. He's gone backwards. He's brave really to not go to the inside, because it shows you how much confidence he's got in that car's traction. He is going to pull to the inside here, is he? No, Vermeulen's going to pull to the inside, but no, not close enough. Going into the Wilson hairpin, what was Montreal, what used to be what used to be Sear Corner way back in the days when this was just effectively 2 right angles linked by a loop. But going through turn number 3 and into the infield section, we've got now with Vermeulen going up the inside. Is he now white into Agostini? A lot of foe looking around from Vermeulen, trying to put the opposite number off. Not genuine overtaking moves, but they're just trying to get into the head of Crossman. And Crossman, to his credit, is not biting, is he? He's not getting involved in that at all. But he is getting involved in trying to hold up the South African, and he's doing so rather well at this moment in time. So they feed their way back through the infield section onto the back straight. Now we go with Vermeulen now looking for a way past. Is he going to go to the inside? Is he? No, not quite going into Brundle, but the S is there. Not a favoured overtaking zone, it must be said, and certainly Crossman lives to fight another few corners, isn't he? Going through the bomb hole, trying to see if he can get a little bit of a gap now through Koru. If he can keep it to the inside as much as possible, he doesn't. He does run slightly wide. That'll put him out of position for Murray's in the final corner. What used to be a chicane is now just a tight left-hander, a bit of an awkward one. But they go back out of Murray's and down the front straight. There's a little curve in there, so that will provide a bit of favouritism to the defending car, as it always does. But 0.4 of a second it is, and these two not being separated, with Bruce Tully dropping back a little bit to the tune of 7 seconds. So these two really are in a class of their own. We'll see now if there's another launch for the lead. There isn't, but Vermeulen now slightly offline, isn't he, coming out of the second corner. But is he going to be able to get any? No, not quite. The turn number 3 is going to be relatively straightforward for Crossman. He does get on the curb though, to a little bit too much on the inside. The car bouncing around there. He won't like that at all. Vermeulen goes down the inside, does he? No, not quite. Into turn number 4. So I'm going to brave it potentially once we see what happens out of Oggies. So go through Hamilton's now, Vermeulen, and he's going to see if he can set him up into Oggies. Not really a favoured overtaking zone, it is not here, although he does brake a bit later than Crossman, and they do actually find. I'm going to stay with this because through Williams they are nose to tail. Now, is Vermeulen going to be able to make a move? You can see someone's gone off in the background there. There's some blue flags going on, but that's not the focus. Vermeulen to the back straight we go on the back bumper. I think it's fair to say of Crossman. He goes to the outside. He's going to make a move around the outside. Is he? No, not quite. As Crossman, though, gets out of position on the tighter line through Brundle, but holds it nicely. Coming out of the second part of the S's, what is now Nelson. Through the bomb hole they go, and they're going to be brave and try and leave this for another battle. We'll come back to this, though, in short order. Back at Pospíšil, 0.6 of a second behind Gordon Brown, half a second clear of Wouter Heijmans. So Heijmans on his recovery drive is now behind the experienced Czech driver. The Porsche not really proving to be towards Pospíšil's liking, but he is still in the mid pack as far as the pro class. So he's actually 6th in pro, despite being 17th, which tells you a lot about what's happened to the other drivers. As we can see now, trying to see where the leader is as they go across the line. And we've gone back to turn number 2. So, yep, there's no change there, no movement into turn number 1. And we're going back to the infield section where Vermeulen's going to try again to weave his magic and try and put the incumbent as the lead off. So we'll see now. I think Kalugin is off, and into the wall goes Alexander Kalugin. And what was been a difficult couple of weekends, a difficult couple of Sundays, continues for the Russian rocket with Chris Gebman certainly nearby. I think they were together going into the final sector, weren't they? So I can only assume that he's had an off on his own accord. Certainly no damage on Chris Gebman, certainly not on the back anyway, which is where they were before. And Kalugin drops all the way to probably 36, 37. The Russian, yeah, he's 36th now, isn't he? Behind Dreadlock Stephen. The Russian now having it all to do to recover. So we'll see now. There's a big old train, isn't there, behind Gordon Brown, behind Darren Townsend. Gordon Brown is the first of them. So Townsend, 3.3 seconds back, has done well to get up into 15th. So the Welshman driving a fine race. He's 4th in the AM class amongst a sea of silvers and pros, and he's got Pospíšil, he's got Heijmans, he's got Clayton behind it, as well as Brown, all in a higher class. Before he's got Jeffrey de Vos as the next AM driver. So a bit of pressure here for the Welshman, and we'll see what happens here as Brown in the Sky Branded Ferrari recovers from a disappointing non-qualifying, really didn't set a lap time, and tries to set about recovering the lead. Well, if not recovering the lead, and certainly damage limitation, but he does go off, and down the inside goes Václav Pospíšil, which is a position on track, but not a position in terms of class. So Pospíšil in the pro class, you can tell from the lighter colours. Gordon Brown again off at Maurice, and that might be another position ceded to another pro. But Brown in the silver category won't worry too much about losing these positions, but he will worry a bit more about losing time. You can see Josh Clayton there in the back. In the background has quite a bit of damage on his front end, doesn't he? So we'll see. Oh dear. Yeah, that's not going to be helping him now, but he has got Jeffrey de Vos right behind him. That Gooday right behind him, although not for much longer, because he spins off and he takes out de Vos. De Vos looks like he might just be able to hold on, but he's off and into the cornfields and near the McDonald's that's over the part of the track back there. And de Vos there taken off by Clayton as he goes wide. Not really an awful lot that Josh Clayton could do was return to the pits. But de Vos, I would make it, has dropped 4 or 5 positions. Where is he? Just ahead potentially of Dale Kelleher. So he's dropped 25th, isn't he? Crossman, meanwhile, still holding on from Vermeulen. So Vermeulen's still unable to get past him. Go halfway through to this race. He'll be ruining that lap one mistake. So he'll probably be thinking, well, I could have been 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds ahead by now, like I was in race number 1. But it's not to be for the South African so far, although he does look as close as he has done for some considerable time on the back of Crossman. You can see there's another battle for third place, which we will be keeping an eye on as well. And Vermeulen not able to make a move into turn number 1 this time around. Does he get a better exit out of there than Crossman? He is going to have a look, but not a full move. So Vermeulen now does get Crossman a little bit offline, but I don't think it's going to be enough to make any kind of headway going into turn number 3. And Vermeulen there runs slightly wide actually, so that will be that for another infield section. We have got a bit more of a battle with Greg Wood Certainly looking rearwards and not forwards. He's got Serafino, Gabino and Lee Colpitts more pressingly behind him. So 2 silvers chasing an AM, but if you look, Michael Coppens is just behind in the AM class as well. So Wood will be quite keen for a buffer to remain. Lee Colpitts, meanwhile, is leading the silver class, so he hasn't got to get past Wood unless he thinks that Gabino will be taking him out, although there was a bit of inter-class skullduggery for Lee Colpitts in race number 1, wasn't there, when Steve Gazer of the pro class hit him and took him out of the podium position. But certainly no such bad luck so far this time around. Lee Colpitts looking very happy in that BMW, so we should see, well, hopefully, if he does keep and I do hope he does do well, because he's had no luck at all this season. He's just gone slightly wide there. I do hope that he does retain at least a top 3, even if not the win, because you never want to be too biased, but you do like to see drivers have a bit of luck come their way. Now, Colpitts is just ahead of Gabino. Gabino's another man on a bit of a recovery drive. Had a so-so race number 1, but this would be a return to form for the Italian. So the Italian, whilst he's aiming for the top, whilst he's aiming for the lead of the silver class, and he'll know it's the lead of the silver class, what he won't want to do is mess it all up, because you can see Jordan Marshall and Luke Richings just behind both Marco Lino and Renard Serfontaine. So it's very congested in that silver class area. As we can see more, as we are now just halfway into the race, we can still see that Grossman doing everything he can to hold off Vermeulen, and Morgan Grace doing everything he can to depose Marcelin Brustulli. Brustulli is in 3rd position, but he's not getting a moment's peace out of Morgan Grace. But the Porsche does have a little bit more straight line speed. Paul Trotman, meanwhile, is coming to the pit, so something has befallen the Welsh veteran there. And yep, he's now a couple of laps out to Kalugin's up to 34th. Jack Barnett's another man to have had his fair share of woe this time around, down in 36, so not one for the Englishman to write home about. Dale Kelleher, meanwhile, up into 24th, so a return to form there for the Englishman, as Jeffrey DeFast has dropped, hasn't he? Dropped to 27, so Darren Mark Davies 3 seconds behind Dale Kelleher, and actually only in 6th or 7th place, isn't he, in the AM class? So good job there from Darren Davies, formerly of the Coventry Parish himself, the Welshman. And we go to the lead once again, because for Vermeulen it's said 1/10 of a second. It's not quite that, is it? Because you can see that Crossman has gone away, although Crossman's slightly wider through the Coram section, isn't he? Whereas Vermeulen is able to hold a tighter line, but the Englishman's still able to hold on. Down the straight we go. And I don't think there's going to be a further move here, is there? So, no. Down the inside we go, actually. Vermeulen's going to have a look for the first time in a long time. Gets his nose up the inside. Crossman does have to leave a little bit more room, but not much. And Vermeulen's squeezed out once again, as Crossman there, that's the closest he's got to a mistake to hand the lead over to Vermeulen, but he dealt with it rather well. Vermeulen going up the inside, they were not able to continue the move and complete the move, and now we still, with less than half the race to go, South African starting to mount a bit of a challenge, isn't he? As they go through Hamilton's, can he frighten the Englishman out of the way? Certainly looking a little bit more on rails, but you would expect that as the hunter rather than the hunted, as Crossman now having to think about where the South African's going to go, and where he's going to go is nearly up the inside through Williams, but they both hold a slightly tight line through Williams. Down the straight we go. Now I think Crossman will have enough, will he, to move over to the right hand side. He is going to move over to the right hand side. That's brave, because Vermeulen is coming down the inside. He goes, no, not quite into the S's, or Brundle, followed by Nelson. Now you've got the short burst onto the bomb hole. It's only down a couple of gears, so it's not really an overtaking zone, and it runs all the way through Coram, and we're back again to the start-finish line. It's just like that, although again Crossman slightly wide through Coram. I wonder if that's by design, because it does leave him slightly out of position, but you have to say that the Ferrari is making it work, or the lead Ferrari is making it work. As Vermeulen now gets in the slipstream, is he going to have a run down the inside? I don't think he's going to be able to, because I think Crossman's going to get over if he needs to, and certainly he is going to hold on once more, but is Vermeulen going to be able to launch a move? I think there's contact there. Down the inside goes Crossman to hold off, and there's a little bit more contact going into turn number 2. So Vermeulen, who got penalised for the racing incident with Travaglioni last time out on lap number 1, didn't affect his position too much, to be honest with you. He still won, as far as I can make out, but Vermeulen is second still for the moment. There's a little bit of body contact there, but that is a warning shot from Vermeulen to Crossman. Crossman able to hold on and able to retain the lead by the skin of his teeth. Morgan Grace, meanwhile, has dropped back from the Porsche of Markel and Brustulli, so that battle looks for the moment to be settled. Paul Vidler has dropped all the way back, hasn't he? He's a rather lonely race in 5th position, the Ferrari. Don't know if there's any issues underlying there, but it's about 15 seconds he is behind Grace. Wow, and the rest, actually, 15.3 seconds he is off the pace. Jamie Thacker, meanwhile, not far behind in 6th, and the AM, well, it's a returns form for the man who's actually towards the bottom, isn't he, of the AM Championship, but he's not deserved to be. There's been no luck afforded to him by the racing gods, but if he could complete this, this would be a much more welcome return to form. Greg Wood, meanwhile, in second, he's 7th in the AM class, he's 2nd in the AM class, but Greg Wood returns to form from his previous misdemeanours and offs in race number 1. We'll certainly find out what's going on there as the culprits there leading the silver class. Still has Gabino about 2nd behind. The BMW looking a little bit bent in at the back, but obviously not concerning the Englishman too much because he remains in a very strong 8th overall. No real need to be attacking too hard at the AM drivers in front because it's Gabino and then it's Coppens behind. So we just want to open the door for Gabino, and Coppens behind represents another challenge in the AM class. Marshall, meanwhile, is in 3rd in the silver class, just ahead of Luke Richings and Marcolino. Darren Towns has actually got up to 14. Vettel Apostrophe with 15, so a lot of other drivers have fallen by the wayside there as Gordon Brown makes his way, or tries to make his way through the traffic there. It's a bit of a queue, isn't it, behind Lido? Lido's I say it's bottom bottom. It's only 1.3 seconds, 1.2 seconds off the back, but towards the outside towards the inside goes Townsend. Down the inside at Riches. Does he make the corner? He will make the corner, avoids the curve on the inside of Bosch, which can't do anything with him, but he's going to defend for Gordon Brown. Brown to the inside, Hyman to the outside. Hyman's always found was going to be struggling to make the corner there as he went 3 wide, but Gordon Brown's going down the inside. He's not going to be able to make the move stick, and Hyman's now defending from stablemate Renard Serpentine. Serpentine with a bent-in front end on that Ferrari is able to hold off, or be held off, by Hyman's, but he's going to have another go down the inside as Hyman's breaks a bit later into Macastini, and I think deals with the challenge of Serpentine just for the moment. As Colpitts, meanwhile, only a 10th of a second behind Greg Wood, so everything said about not attacking too hard appears to have gone out the window. Colpitts now, well, he's a bit more than a 10th, isn't he, behind Greg Wood, but Wood holding on with relative comfort so far, it must be said. The AM driver, all he's got to do is finish second, and he still keeps what is a fairly decent lead, even notwithstanding the drop score. Keeps a fairly decent lead in the AM Championship. Jared Vermeulen, meanwhile, has not got a fairly decent lead in this race because he's second, 2/10 of a second behind Crossman. Crossman's going to do the familiar thing of going to the inside to cover that off, and Vermeulen's going to have to go around the outside and try and see if he can get the cutback. But Crossman's almost slow enough, and I say slow enough in the context of a racing series, that seems a bit mad, doesn't it? But he's slow enough through the apex to not allow himself to get cut or be switchbacked by Jared Vermeulen. Vermeulen, though, they are starting to be caught by Markel and Brustulli, so I wonder if there's been a bit of an off somewhere, because Brustulli was a lot further away than 3 seconds, so I wonder if maybe one's hit the other and they've agreed to let each other catch up. So we'll find out what happened there, because Vermeulen was a lot more than 3 seconds clearer of Brustulli. Crossman obviously a lot more than 3 seconds clear of Brustulli, but Brustulli there 3.7 seconds off the pace, so they've caught up. I'll just take a look at the timetables, actually. I can do that, and we shall see what has happened there. So yeah, 1 minute 55, so something's gone wrong there for Crossman, and I would suggest that the timetables then mean that Vermeulen Probably did a little bit of engineering a gap somewhere, because again, yeah, you can see a massive difference in sector 2, 46 seconds off, or 8 seconds off there. 46 seconds sector 2 is what's done for them, so certainly a collision somewhere. And Crossman now fighting it for all his worth to retain that victory. Down the inside he goes to hold off the position, and he does hold off the position. We're half a tenth back, so I think he might be rehearsing a drag race to the line. I mean, it's going to be difficult because of the right-hander at the final corner. There's a little right-handed kink coming out of the final corner as well, which will always favour the defending car. But for Mueller, he might just maybe play around with that. To the inside he goes, no, he thinks better of it. Goes to the outside at turn number 2. We'll see if there was any incident at all. But out of Wilson's they go, as Vermeulen's trying that cutback now coming out of Wilson's. Didn't work there to no avail, as Crossman leads them through turn number 3, going into Agostini, so named after the motorcycling world champion. But up the inside goes Crossman, and he holds off again for another battle, because Vermeulen there tries to cut back. He's going to have a look into Hamilton's again. No, not quite. But Crossman is just offline, and now they're going to Oggies, which is another tight hairpin, double apex hairpin. You can see there that Ferrari in second, Vermeulen's got much tighter turning circles, so his car's certainly feeling a lot happier compared to Crossman. But Crossman now really under pressure down the back straight, and he's going to keep it as tight to the right hand side as he possibly can. Vermeulen's going to have no way round on the inside there. Now Crossman merges out a little bit towards the inside, but round the outside goes Vermeulen. He's going to have to be left space. Is he? No, not quite. I thought he was going to make the move there, but they were side by side going into Nelson's, and somehow Crossman remains in the lead, because Vermeulen not able to make the move on the inside. They were side by side when they got to the corner, but the curb on the inside, the sleeping policeman on the inside, very difficult to trust. I think that's what settled it for the South African, he doesn't have to win the race, to be honest with you. He can finish second and still have a commanding lead in the championship. He ducks in and out. Obviously he wants to win, but he ducks in and out behind to try and make a move, but he's not going to risk anything too silly. Now Crossman touches the curb a little bit too hard there, but he's able to pull over to the right hand side again and block off the run on the inside. I suspect he'll be doing for the remaining 9 minutes, as Vermeulen unable to make the move and make the switchback work, as Brashidi now 3.4 seconds behind. He'll be willing them to collide. He'll be willing them to have just another incident if they possibly can, as Brashidi now might be in line to inherit an unlikely victory. Someone off in the woods there, that is Alexander Kalugin. Kalugin continuing his wretched race off at Agostini. And I think it'll be a case of just circulating there for the Russian Rocket, who's had a difficult couple of rounds after settling so well in the Silver Championship. It's been back down to earth with a bump. But Vermeulen now up the inside at Williams. He'll have to take me word for that, as he backs out there, going onto the back straight, as Crossman now holds off again. So we're going to go to the inside once again. We're going to rinse and repeat from last time, as he tries to crisscross down the inside. Goes Vermeulen. I think he sold him the dummy, but not quite. He's too tight going into Brundle, and Crossman turns across and continues to hold first position. But that was just another trick in the book that Vermeulen now can't use again, because the crisscross down the inside nearly sold Crossman a dummy, but Crossman equal to it there, as they go now with 7.5 minutes to go. So getting well into the final quarter of this race this afternoon, this race, second race, and certainly the evening's work, as Vermeulen now gets to the back of he goes again to the back of Crossman's Ferrari, goes for another move around the outside at turn number 1. Crossman not letting him have any of the advantageous positions as he switches there. You can see the leader just switching very, very aggressively to the inside, and it's well within his rights to do so. That's not a criticism at all, as Vermeulen again goes around the outside and again is forced to settle in behind. I'll risk seeing the battle for 7th and 8th between Colpitts and Wood, as that's Kalugin pulling into the pits to end his misery, and I'll risk as well seeing Pospisil on the back of Darren Townsend, with Gordon Brown dropping back a little bit behind Richington Hyman's. So Brown now in 5th in silver, with Jordan Marshall still in 3rd and holding the final podium position, the Frenchman. And We'll see again going on to the back straight. These two once again nose to tail. Vermeulen though gets a little bit edgy, gets a little bit loose, doesn't he? I think he just caught the grass going into Williams, and that is going to be Crossman safe for another half a lap or so, you would have thought. Colpitts meanwhile still trying to see if he can depose Wood of 7th, although there's no material gain. He's got a bit of a gap now between himself and Serafino Gabino, so Gabino dropping back just a little bit, and Wood now 1.5 seconds off the back. It looks like the top 10 are fairly settled beyond the top 4, so 5th all the way to 10th looking okay. Michael Coppens meanwhile has a bit of bother off of Darren Townsend for that final podium slot in the AM class. Coppens has done a fine job in both of the races so far, the Dutchman, and he's now got to re-engage just a little bit because Townsend, only 6 tenths of a second back, is now being chased by Pospisil. He might try and use Pospisil to actually cause a bit of carnage. Pospisil goes down the inside. He's not going to do that because Townsend defends well, and he catches Coppens at a rate of knots through the Nelson bend, just conscious of not missing any overtakes for the lead, although you can see as well they've been side by side and they've been caught again by Marklin Brushtully, who's not had such shenanigans from Morgan Grace, who has been right behind him the whole way and has not been able to even have a sniff at trying to make a move, and now only 2.5 seconds behind the Ferrari. If he can get involved in a bit of chaos, then he might be able to be actually a bit of a blessing for Daniel Crossman. Only 5 minutes to go, and Crossman can't wait for those 5 minutes to be over. As Vermeulen there stalks his prey through Oggies, double apex right-hander to get on to Williams. Now this is crucial for both drivers, because if he can get a good run here, he might be able to pass down the straight into Brundle. As it is, I think Crossman's going to keep it to the inside as much as he possibly can without being foolish as they pass the Aston Martin. That's Dreadlock Steve. Well done for getting out of the way, Dreadlock Steve. Mature driving to get out of the way of all the pro leaders well before the braking zone. So Crossman hits the sleeping policeman on the inside, and that is going to unsettle him, but not enough for a move into the bomb hole, as Jared Vermeulen again has another look, but never stares up the inside into the bomb hole and then through Coram, unable to make any kind of impression. They just kind of have to try to set him up for the final corner, which I think might be a move coming. There's 3 laps to go after this, and 3 laps for these two to sort out who is going to win this race. You can't count out Brushtully or Grace, but Vermeulen to the outside again going into Riches. It's not going to work for the umpteenth time for the South African, and once again Crossman's going to go to the inside, but not in any egregious manner, as Vermeulen has a look, but he's unable to make any kind of impact there. Brushtully, you can see in the background, he's still clear by half a second. The thing with that Porsche is it's got such good traction that it buys him a couple of tenths out of corners every single time it's a heavy acceleration zone. And what happens then is that Grace is not able to get anywhere near. Fiddler, meanwhile, 20 seconds, kind of all the fuss is about. He's had a pretty lonely race. He's 20 seconds off the back of 4th and 12 seconds clear of Jamie Thacker, who now has Greg Wood for company, as Michael Coppens loses out to Darren Townsend, loses out to Vaclav Pospisil, loses out to Wouter Hyman. So what was 3rd in AM is now 4th in AM and is 14th overall, as Townsend gets himself up into the top 11 and takes away the podium hopes of Michael Coppens so far, at least. Anyway, he's 2 seconds off the back of Marshall, but I don't think there's going to be for any leading or any kind of lead going into a Vermeulen there. Tries to move, and again is found wanting by just Daniel Crossman. Crossman's put up an unbelievable fight, isn't he? And he's lost a bit of time through the S's, so I think that Crossman might be safe for another half a lap or so. Greg Wood, meanwhile, is trying to ensure that Jamie Thacker is not safe. The Aston Martin looked after his tyres really well and is now right on the back of Jamie Thacker. Thacker in 6th position is, he's not really had a lot to do in terms of defending of his position. It's been a really faultless couple of races from Thacker. He'll hate to lose out now with 2 laps to go. He will hate if he's beaten by Wood, as Vermeulen once again right on the back of Crossman. There's another Aston Martin in the way. Who's that? That is, I think, car number 93, but we'll see who it is that they're on. It is number 93. It's Lemon, who is the AM reserve driver. Now we'll have to get out of the way in a rather strategic position, but Crossman now gets right up behind him, going into the braking zone. So Crossman has to pass coming out of Agostini as Lemon goes off, but does hold up Daniel Crossman, but Crossman's able to hang on just for another couple of corners. Vermeulen now trying to launch his attack. That might have been one of his best chances behind the lapped car, with Dale Kelleher ahead, too far away to be an impact in this race over the next couple of laps. I think Townsend's been passed, I think, by Poshbagil. I certainly thought that there was some movement going into the final quarter. Car 34, no it isn't. It's Poshbagil who's gone off, so Townsend, I think, letting that play out. Now to the outside goes Jared Vermeulen. He's right around the outside going into Nelson Bend, and he's going to make the move. I think there's contact there. Now, is he going to give that back? I don't think he is. I think he's well within his rights to take the place. But Vermeulen, with less than a minute to go, makes the move for the lead. And Daniel Crossman will be oh so gutted to lose out after 38, 39 minutes it was. But Vermeulen now has to hold on for this next lap or so, as the South African made a ballsy move around the outside of the S's, going into the inside for Nelson. Crossman had to turn at some point, but Vermeulen was right there and on the inside. So Vermeulen, at long last, takes the lead, and now has just got to use that pace, use that grunt to get away and confirm another double victory. Crossman will be absolutely gutted in that Ferrari, having led for so long, but he's still got a job to do, because Marcelin Brustulli, who's still got attention from Morgan Grace. You can see that's Vaclav Poshbagil is off in the cornfields and the McDonald's over there. Vaclav Poshbagil is getting a watching brief for this, but we are going to stick with Marcelin Brustulli, who is now in prime position to possibly take second place. I don't think he's going to manage it, but one more slip from Crossman and this turns a possible win into fourth. So Grace now having a look. Is he at Marcelin Brustulli? I don't think he is. He isn't going to quite get close enough, and he goes off and into the weeds, but back on comes Morgan Grace. That's his race for third place done. I would have thought, as Daniel Crossman now is 0.8 of a second back, and he'll be ruining not being able to hold on, as he took the very defensive line going into Brundles, but wasn't able to close off the gap. Vermeulen just breaking around the outside a lap previous, and taking the position from Daniel Crossman. But Crossman can hold his head high because he's managed to keep the beast behind him for longer than most others have done. But as is often the case in race number 2, as is often the case on Sunday nights, as is often the case in the Simnet Sunday Sprint Championship in Formula Racing League, Jared Vermeulen is going to come out of the final corner, and he's going to be looking at the checkered flag first. He pulls over to the right hand side, and that was hard fought compared to most of his race wins this season. But Vermeulen sweeps all before him once again, and Daniel Crossman comes over the line in second position after an excellent race-long battle. Those two drivers have put on a hell of a show for us. Marcelin Brustulli, it's a really impressive third position for the Canadian, and Marcelin Brustulli can be rightly pleased with that. Grace showing his respect there, as he always does. Paul Fiddler, meanwhile, is going to cross the line, the loneliest of fifth places. He will be 25 seconds off the pace and just getting across the line. Jamie Thacker, though, is going to be challenged once again by Greg Wood. I think Thacker's going to take it, the Aston Martin, on the wrong side, but Thacker challenged for the AM victory and holding on for the AM victory by Greg Wood. It's Lee Colpitts who's going to win the silver class, and a bit of light relief in a disappointing season for the Englishman. Serafino Gabino is second in silver and ninth overall, ahead of Jordan Marchal, the Frenchman, on the podium in the silver class. Wouter Heijmans takes 11th, but is 6th in the pro class, and Darren Townsend, who was 3rd in AM and 12th overall. Michael Coppens faded at the end, is 13th and 4th in the AM class, ahead of Jack Gaudet in the Bentley. He was 4th in the silver class. Sam Reeves, the reserve, is in 5th. An excellent showing from him in the longer format. Andrew Eden in 16th, ahead of Luke Richings and Terry Tierney. Gordon Brown made it up to 19th, ahead of Renard Serfontaine, so that's important for the silver championship, with Marco Lino in 20th. Jeffrey the Fast, 22nd, ahead of James O'Leary, and Waste, the AM reserve, with Johnson and Darren Mark Davies next across the line in 25th and 26th, ahead of Chris Getman, who's had a disappointing weekend, or disappointing night's work in the silver Porsche. Now Gruger is in 27th ahead of 28th ahead of Dale Kelleher, with Matt Lemon in 30th over Dreadlock Steve, Vaclav Pospisil, Jack Barnett, Andrew Kalugin, Joachim Verrett, Paul Trotman, Josh Clayton, and I think Michelle van der Waal also hitting a few issues as well. Steve Desire and Ryan Betterson ahead of Richard Gearman and Miguel Silva are the final finishers, or non-finishers, it must be said, in 42, as we continue or complete the evening's racing. So we'll wait a couple of laps, I think, or a couple of moments for the drivers to come back in, try and see if we can actually see if there's any interviews going forward, but we'll try and see actually if there's any chance of a replay of that move. So we'll flick it through as much as we possibly can, as Gordon Brown does join the party after telling everybody not to expect everything. We're just having a look at how the lead changed positions a lap or so from the end. So let's see if we can try and get a move here. So Gordon, you might be looking at the race lead, obviously, but whilst we try and find out how the race lead's changed, talk us through your evening. Obviously, it was a very difficult race for yourself. You said you weren't going to have any practice, so a bit of a save, really, certainly race number 2.
Yeah, it was good. Actually, you know what? Actually, I had quite a good race. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Race 1, night time, pretty much just kind of drove around the track on lap 1 at 10 miles per hour just to get through it all. I think it was quite a bit of action in both races, actually. Car done some strange things. Again, with practice, as you mentioned, probably would have picked it up around turn 3, and the long right hander onto the back straight. The back end just went really light randomly twice, once in each race. Caused a bit of an issue. I did have quite a good race 2 until that point, unfortunately. I think I was up to 4th in class, 16th on the road, I think. Kind of just followed Darren Townsend through the field. He had a cracking race as well. He went from, I think it was back of the grid actually. I think he was disconnected in race 1, so started back off the grid. He got a jump on me at the start, and I just kind of followed him through the field. But yeah, it wasn't too tonight.
In race number 2, obviously, it was a lot more impressive from yourself. You might have been aware of the championship standings before, but I think Snetterton overtook you actually in race number 1. Are you thinking about that at the moment? Are you thinking about finishing ahead of people like Chris Gepper and people like Renat Snetterton, or is it just try and see how each weekend takes you?
I wasn't until I seen halfway through race 2 I was ahead of Snetterton, Gearman and Gedman, who were ahead of me coming into tonight. I seen I was ahead of them and suddenly got excited that the championship battle might still be back on after last week, because I think after last week I was a bit like, that's it, too bad. I've had another 3 bad races, so it's probably not going to happen. But yeah, seeing what happened to those guys, I don't know exactly what did happen, but I did notice myself being in front of them. So I started to think championship at that point, and obviously started to take it easy. And then what happened is I took it easy, concentration dropped, and the back end went. Had the longest crash I've ever had. I think I took about 12 seconds before the car finally snapped beyond recovery. I was zigzagging down the back straight for about 10 seconds. Yeah, it just went, and then that was unfortunately that. But I think Snetterton had another issue as well, potentially in race 2. I'm not too sure. I think I did finish ahead of him.
You did. A couple of places ahead.
Yeah.
Is it going to change how you? Is it going to change how you race now? Because we're over halfway through the season now, which seems daft to say after 4 rounds, doesn't it? But we're over halfway through the season, so does it change fundamentally how you race now, and do you think a little bit more tactically?
Yeah, I mean, I think after Snetterton last week called me out publicly in Discord, but like the old Formula 1 games was a driver would call you out to make them you're the rival. So I kind of think I'm going to have to just do that, just to sort of build up the drama just a little bit. But realistically, I think coming into Nordschleife next week, I think it's just survival at that point. I don't think I'll be thinking about who I'm actually racing against. Like tonight, I tried to keep Hymans behind me as a buffer, when 9 times out of 10 I would have just let him go. I was just very conscious that, you know, Serpentine was right behind him as well for most of that race too. So yeah, it was just, I think next race out it's survival, and then we'll look at what happens, I think, for the final two.
Okay. Congratulations. Greg, we're joined by Greg Woods, who was currently so far got a commanding lead of the AM Championship. Greg, it was kind of a tale of 2 races, really. Talk me about race 1, because you were quite far up early on, and then obviously found yourself way back in, I think it was 37th at one point. So what happened?
Oh, what didn't happen? So of my own volition, I went wide on the first corner, attempted a rejoin. I think there is a report in there somewhere, not against me. I originally thought I might have to self-report for turn 1, but I don't think I need to. Might have rejoined just fine. Someone just didn't want to let me rejoin. So then I went spinning into turn 2, and then got righted, and then managed to carry on. A few laps later was getting back into things, and I had 2 drivers coming up behind me I had quite a damaged car, so I was a bit slow, but I had the command into the first turn, and 2 drivers decided to play braking chicken and both hit me, in which case I went all the way to the barrier. I continued to limp for the remaining 15 minutes, and then on a overtake that Dreadlock Steve was trying to put on me, I thought I had control to try and continue holding it to the left on the inside going into the bomb hole, and the car just didn't want to turn, the fronts just didn't want to grip up, and I slid into him, and I will be self-reporting for that one. And race 2, well, it was a lot cleaner. It's simple as I got to the first few corners just fine. Almost had Thacker a few times on the first few laps. A lot of the pro and silver in front of us seemed to disappear. I imagine having their own incidents. And then he managed to gap me by about 3 seconds for the central portion of the race. And I'm not quite sure what was slowing down towards the final portion, but I was within a second for the last few laps, and I almost got him on the line. But I think the Mustang had better traction than me this evening, and beat me a 10.5 to the line. But it was a good fun pace-on-pace battle with Thacker.
So are you thinking at this moment in time, obviously you've got a really good lead in the championship at the moment, notwithstanding any dropped scores, but if... Do you think now about the championship? Do you think now about tactically racing? Do you think that there's certain times you can take a risk or not?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've got in this... the way I think about it, and I play tennis normally, and this is the way I approach tennis and most sports I've ever involved in. The second you start going for it is the second you start becoming tentative, and you end up falling on the opposite end of the spectrum of instead of fortune favouring the brave, the opposite happens, and you back off, and before you know it, get rear-ended, people dive down your inside, and you end up how I did, I guess, in my first race tonight. So if I've got time and availability to think, well, maybe I let a silver driver through like I did last week, then yeah, I'll do that. But if it's heat of the moment, wheel on wheel, no, I'm not backing out. I'm not ceasing. If I'm going to keep a silver pro driver behind me, I don't know when that might pay out as a positive. That I might get an AM driver. Maybe it's Thacker, maybe it's FaZe coming up, and I might have needed them there all along. So no point backing out for me.
Fair enough. No, in that case, I think we shall end it there. Well done to you two gentlemen. No appearance on the Jared Vermeulen podcast from the man himself, so we'll certainly hear from him probably next week. It just remains for me to say thank you all for joining us belatedly. A couple of issues at the start of the stream, which I'm sure you two will pick up as you watch it back. But just remains for me to say I've been Jack Prentice, and I shall see you next week at the Nordschleife. Goodbye.